Right, let's make a start. Welcome everyone. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. A little bit about myself. I'm Vishal Ladwa, end user computing consultant at PowerON Platforms. Been in IT for over 10 years, dealing with a wide range of customers in the public and private sector, which has taken me all over the globe. Primarily focus on predominantly Microsoft-based end user computing solutions to provide modern management and enterprise mobility capabilities, leveraging Azure, Config Manager, and Intune platforms and all that good stuff. I joined PowerON Platforms within their consultancy practice, and so far it's been amazing to work for this company. Just before we get started, quick update on who PowerON Platforms are. We like to say that we're formed by a collection of industry veterans. We've written a lot of the cookbooks on some of the system center products, and we're a company that's very much focused on the IT management and the automation of private and public cloud, be it hybrid or on-premise. PowerON's strength is in the automated management of systems across these platforms, and we're very much a business-led rather than technology-led company to provide solutions which meets the business requirements rather than installing the latest and greatest products. And that's to ensure that you get the right return on your investment. Right, so let's take a quick look at the agenda for today's session on the importance of patch management. We'll start off by setting the scene on why patch management should be high in your priority. We'll then review some of the changes that Microsoft have made to software updates over the past 18 months or so in order to simplify the deployment process. We'll then take a look at the different options you've got currently for deploying these software updates to your endpoints. Then we'll look at the best practices that can be used to help you stay current with your software updates. And I'll try and make this session as hands-on as possible, so hopefully it's not going to be endless slides. In the last couple of months, we've seen a couple of high-profile attacks. There was WannaCry and Petya, which have had some devastating effects on some organizations. These malware exploited known vulnerabilities in the operating system and applications in order to firstly get access to the internal devices and the data stored on them. And then they use lateral movement techniques to spread to other devices in the network. Now, many of these vulnerabilities have been identified and patches were released and applied for a long time. So the outbreak of WannaCry could have been prevented by applying the March Patch Tuesday Windows update, for example. The organizations that were affected simply didn't have any control on ensuring their systems were patched by all the latest updates that were released monthly every Patch Tuesday. So this proves that ensuring patches that are deployed efficiently and in a timely manner on a regular monthly cadence is a really challenging task for many organizations and IT administrators. So what are the main changes in software updates over the past year or so? In May 2016, Microsoft released the Windows 7 SP1 Convenience Update. So this was a single cumulative update that included all the previous updates since Windows 7 SP1 was released all the way back in April 2016. The update could be applied to existing devices as a standard update and could also be injected to a Windows 7 image to ensure that you are deploying a fully patched Windows 7 device. So, you don't have to wait for the patches to be applied after the build and avoid incurring the associated restarts as part of that. Around the same time, Microsoft also started to release monthly roll-up packages for Windows 7, 8.1, and Server 2008 R2, 2012 R2. These roll-up packages included all of the non-security fixes in a single update. The security fixes were still released individually, and the monthly roll-ups weren't actually cumulative. So they were just a convenient way to install all the non-security fixes in a single update package that were released each month. Also around the same time, Microsoft moved updates from the Microsoft Download Center to the Microsoft Update Catalog. So we'll have a little look at how that looks like later. Then in October 2016, those monthly rollup packages started to include the security updates that were left out previously. So now we have just one monthly update package that includes both the non-security and security updates. Also from October 2016, the updates also became cumulative. So the updates included the new and previous month's updates. So for example, the current monthly cumulative updates included all of the updates going back to October 2016. Microsoft also started to release monthly security-only updates and a preview of monthly roll-up updates as well. Now, in March 2017 of this year, Microsoft changed the way they publish information about the updates. So they replaced the security bulletins with the online security upgrade guide portal for Windows 10. Microsoft started releasing Delta updates. So let's look at what the security upgrade guide portal looks like. You can access the portal using the URL there. So we can just go in, set the search parameters for Windows 10 1703 updates from the beginning of June. So you can take a look at the release notes for the July 2017 security updates. This is basically going to show you all of the products for which the security updates actually includes and applies. So then you can see which products to actually concentrate on applying updates to, right? Then going back, you can click the article reference, and it's going to take you to the article. Now on the left-hand side, you'll find all the historical updates that were released since the product was actually released. In this case, Windows 10 1703. In the middle, if you scroll through, here listed, you'll find the non-security fixes. So all the operating system improvements that were included in this update package. To see the actual security updates listed, we can go back to the security upgrade guide and check the details button over here. And you see that you get a list of rows with the CVE detail. So this is the industry standard identifier for vulnerabilities. So these are the common vulnerabilities within here. Then we can scroll down and we can view the details on the vulnerability that this actual fix addresses. So you can see Windows 10 1703 is the affected product, and the monthly update link we were looking at. Then go back, turn off the details, and click on the security update download link. This takes you to the Microsoft Update Catalog. This is where you can actually download the Delta or cumulative updates for the 32-bit or 64-bit platforms. If you want to test this in a lab environment, and you could look at the actual detailed information there as well. So just going back into the security upgrade guide, let's have a look at the different types of updates that are being released. So here you can see this particular update, the July Patch Tuesday. There was a second cumulative update for Windows 10 1703. Microsoft referred to this as quality updates. So it includes all of the fixes in the previous months. So in this case, May update, including the new security and non-security fixes for the current month. As you can see in the Microsoft Updates catalog previously, you could see both the Delta and the cumulative updates for each of the 32-bit and 64-bit architectures, and they both have the same KB number. So the Delta update only contains the new non-security and security fixes since the previous month. Now, if you look at this update here, this is a preview update. So 1 week after Patch Tuesday, so the third Tuesday of every month, Microsoft released a second cumulative update, which is a preview update. This includes all the fixes for the current monthly rollup, which came out a week before on Patch Tuesday. However, these also include some of the non-security updates that will appear in the next month's cumulative update. So in this case, it would be for July. So these preview updates allow you to start testing with, the next new non-security fixes that are going to be released the next month. It allows you to get a head start on that. In Windows Update, this will come through as an optional update. Or you can get the standalone package from the Microsoft Update catalog website if you just want to download it from there as a standalone package. So that's Windows 10. So now let's look at Windows 7. So we just adjust the search parameters here. So check Windows 10 and select Windows 7. And you'll notice that there's two different types of updates available every month. So there's the monthly rollup. So this includes all of the fixes from the June monthly rollup, the previous month's rollup, plus the new security fixes and the new non-security fixes. And then you've got the security only. So these are for Windows 7, 8.1 only. The new security fixes in the actual July rollup are bundled separately, which is a security only update. So this is a much lighter payload to deploy to clients than the cumulative monthly rollup, and you may choose to deploy these each month instead. So this should be the minimum thing that you do to keep your clients up to date and secure. Although it won't actually include the additional non-security improvements to the OS. Additionally, this type of update is not cumulative, so you have to ensure that your devices are fully updated with the previous month's update before deploying the following month's security only updates. Otherwise, you're going to see some gaps there in the software updates. In addition, you can get these security only updates via the the Windows Update deployment method. So you need to use WSUS or Config Manager to download from the Microsoft Update catalog and deploy that out. Yep. So if we just go into the monthly rollup, we talked about preview update. So you can actually get the preview update here for the monthly rollup. So again, 7 days after Patch Tuesday, Microsoft release another preview update, just like the Windows 10 1703 preview updates we just saw. This includes all of the fixes for the current monthly rollup, which came out a week before on Patch Tuesday, and includes some of the additional non-security updates that are going to be included in the next monthly rollup. These preview updates allow you to start testing with the next new non-security fixes that haven't been released officially. Again, similar to Windows 10, this comes through as an optional update through Windows Update, or you can get the standalone package from Microsoft, so you can get it through that link. Okay, so that's the Microsoft Upgrade Guide, which you should check regularly for details on patches. So let's just dig back into the slides. So let's get a summary on the monthly patch cycle approach. So recommendation is at a high level is the minimum thing that you should do. The absolute minimum approach should be to ensure security patch compliance. So for Windows 7, 8.1, Server 2008, and 2012, minimum thing you should do is deploy the monthly security only patches. However, as highlighted, you must remember that these are not cumulative. So you have to ensure that all patches are applied every month without skipping any before you deploy the following month's security only update patches. For Windows 10 devices, the minimum thing to do is to deploy the cumulative updates. i.e. the security and non-security fixes aren't separated in the cumulative fixes for Windows 10, unlike Windows 7. So failing the minimum approach, the simplest thing you can do, so looking at all the software update package options, the easiest deployment approach every Patch Tuesday is for Windows 7, 8.1, Server 2008, and 2012, deploy the monthly cumulative update. So that's going to save you a lot of heartache. And also for Windows 10 devices, deploy the cumulative updates. For advanced scenarios, if you've got the time, the cycles, the resources to take patching to the nth degree, for Windows 7, 8.1, Server 2008, and 2012, you can start testing the monthly preview updates as well, released a week after Patch Tuesday. So you can get a head start on actually testing those out ahead of the following month. And for Windows 10 devices, you can also similarly start testing the second cumulative updates released a week after Patch Tuesday. So this is going to allow you to get a head start with the next month's new non-security fixes, right? Okay, moving on. Let's look at the most common software deployment methods and tools that are native to Microsoft that can be leveraged. So Windows Update, this should be very familiar to most people, typically home users and small businesses that you don't have a management infrastructure. It's usually for those type of scenarios. So the endpoints will connect directly out across the internet to Windows Update service to individually download software updates. The advantages to this approach, it's very simple and light to manage, or optionally you can choose not to manage. So it's very light management or no management required, which are controlled through GPO settings. And this enables you to control the user interaction and reboot behavior. Also, you kind of get peer-to-peer. If you're using Windows 10, you get the peer-to-peer sharing of software updates out of the box. So you can take advantage of the Windows 10 delivery optimization feature to share software update content between the clients. And obviously, there are a few limitations to this approach. So you've got absolutely no control on how the updates are downloaded or where they're downloaded from. So there's little control over that traffic, although there is the peer-to-peer capability. There's also the limitation of controlling which actual individual types of updates get applied to the systems. And crucially, there's no central reporting or monitoring capability natively to measure deployment success and compliance of those software updates across your systems. So therefore, conclusion should hopefully be that Windows Update should not really be considered as an enterprise solution. Moving on to the next solution is good old Windows Update for Business. This is essentially Windows Update with some additional controls over it. So Windows Updates for Business allows you to control the timing of when quality and feature updates for Windows 10 and Server 2016 are actually deployed and applied to groups of systems. So it gives you that additional control over Windows Update. It doesn't require any on-premises infrastructure, so although it can be used with WSUS or Config Manager, and you can apply these controls using group policy or MDM solutions like Microsoft Intune. Also allows you to determine when service branches or Windows 10 upgrades are actually deployed to systems. So this allows you to define deployment rings according to your software update deployment strategy. And you can also pause the upgrades for a defined period of time. Again, as with Windows Update, you can take advantage of the peer-to-peer content distribution. So for the Windows 10 devices, you can take advantage using the Windows 10 delivery optimization feature to share the software update content between the clients. So the main disadvantages with this approach is, as mentioned, Windows Update for Business only applies to software updates for Windows 10 and Server 2016. Additionally, it also requires telemetry to be enabled on those Windows 10 devices, and that needs to be collected by Microsoft. And also, there are limitations with reporting features when you're actually integrating this with WSUS and Config Manager. And then moving on to the next solution, so good old Windows Server Update Service, or WSUS. So the advantages with WSUS is it works with all the Microsoft supported OSs and products. So it allows more control on when and which updates are actually applied to the managed systems. You get reporting capabilities that show you compliance statuses from an updates view or a system view. And there is peer-to-peer content distribution as well. So again, for Windows 10 devices, you can take advantage of the actual Windows 10 delivery optimization features to share software updates between clients. Although you can leverage branch cache as well, which will support Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 devices that don't support delivery optimization. So devices can actually share content with devices within the same subnet using branch cache. Then you can configure GPOs to set the download mode to bypass for the Windows 10 devices, so they continue to use the Windows 10 delivery optimization features. Although it is an enterprise solution, we would consider it to be an enterprise solution. There's no control over user interaction, reboots, and when updates are actually applied. So they are quite limited there, using the actual limited options within GPOs. And then we get to configuration manager or config manager. Now, if you're a medium or large organization, you're probably going to be using config manager to control the deployment of software updates. The reason for this is the deep control and flexibility of deploying software updates in one interface without having to use GPO settings at all. And you can use dynamic collections and set granular criteria to group systems to define the servicing rings. And you get the flexibility to include and exclude systems throughout the actual update rollout process. Config Manager also enables granular control over deployment schedules to control reboot behavior and when updates are actually applied on sensitive systems using the maintenance windows feature. And from a reporting perspective, there are richer built-in reports and the ability to customize reports using SQL reporting services. So you get a range of updates. You can see compliance across different collections. And Power BI is ideal for this type of scenario with reporting when you want to create your own custom reports in order to get exactly the information that you're actually looking for. So there will be a blog post URL at the end of the slides, which I'll point out, where one of my colleagues at PowerON created some Power BI reports for Config Manager, which has a Windows Update section to very quickly get a drill down into the current status of patching in your environment. The main benefit is automation with Config Manager. So when using Config Manager, you should be looking to automate as much of the software update process as possible, which is very different from the WSUS approach, where you've actually got less control. So using automatic deployment rules or ADRs, you can actually automate the software update deployment process. Also using functionalities such as server groups, which is a feature. This enables you to better handle groups of server systems which are configured to be highly available at the application layer. So it could be a cluster, SQL cluster, RDS or IIS cluster, or a ADFS farm. So using server groups, you can basically define which servers to patch in which order or a percentage of them. And this ensures critical services, critical servers, they're always available during the software update process. Again, with Config Manager, there is peer-to-peer capability, so you can use branch cache or peer cache. So branch cache will share content with devices within the same subnet, and it's actually a Windows technology, whereas peer cache is actually a native Config Manager technology, which enables sharing of content with devices within a wider boundary group. So you're not limited to just the subnet. So the only disadvantage really is that Config Manager is a complex beast. With all this increased functionality, there is a steep learning curve, as of course, there is added complexity to the software update management process as a result of this. So let's have a look at what a solid automated patch management strategy looks like in the Config Manager console. So just go to the software updates node. So here we have all the software update metadata being synced from WSUS for every patch Tuesday. And then if we look here in the software updates group, the day after patch Tuesday, it creates the software update groups based on the current monthly patch cycle. So here you can see the different monthly patch cycles. So for May, June, July. So that's basically a group of the particular patches that we're going to be deploying that month. If I click on the July Patch Tuesday group, we can see that we have a range of different collections that we are targeting at different defined timeframes. So all of this grouping of updates and deployment to collections here being done on different phases or rings. So it's all done automatically. So you can define these deployment ring collections using a query based off of a AD group membership, for example. There's actually no manual interaction whatsoever for the software update process. So we've defined these groups here of phases. So here at PowerON, collection 1 is actually for staging purposes. So here we'll download the updates and hold them for the first week, just in case we discover or we're informed reliably to not actually deploy a particular patch because it's broken something. So in that scenario, we can immediately stop the process at that point. And none of the environment is actually affected by that potential issue. Then collection 2, we will actually deploy to a test collection of devices that are readily available to do testing and an analysis with line of business apps before actually deploying to the actual next phase. So these could be the designated IT testers whose general role it is to identify issues in the functionality testing. So now if we haven't actually hit any issues in the previous ring, we can deploy out to business users. So in collection 3, these are business users who've been designated as early adopters. So this, in our case, it's actually half of our estate. However, for you, it could be a subset of devices across different business units or departments. And these are usually users that know that they're actually getting these updates early and whose role it is to identify issues with their department's line of business apps. So it could be HR and finance, etc. And then they'll actually pick up on any issues and alert IT as soon as possible if there's any issues. So now in collection 4, so if the early adopters haven't actually identified any major issues, we can move in straight to most or all of the business. So once we've actually gained more confidence in the software updates for that month, we can confidently deploy to the entire state. So obviously throughout this whole process, we're looking for issues, right? We have a strategy. So we're listening, to the IT service desk for any issues that are being reported by the early adopters or initial testing. And if we're not seeing any kind of problems, we can move on to the broader user base. Or if we've identified issues, obviously we're going to pause there and see what we can do to remediate before we can move on. So ultimately, we have a software update deployment cycle where we will initially deploy to a staging collection, and then we'll pause for 7 days, deploy to a test collection, then pause for 7 days, deploy to a subset collection, and then pause for 7 days, then deploy to the entire estate after that. We have this automated deployment mechanism, so that ensures we have a fine balance between avoiding service disruption due to an update breaking stuff, as well as at the same time ensuring you're protected because systems are getting patched in a timely manner until the next Patch Tuesday deployment cycle. So let me show you how we're simply automating this, and to do that we can look at the ADRs, or automatic deployment rule. So ADRs allow us to automate what used to be a manual process in Config Manager. So in the download, the approval, and the deployment of software updates. So for a traditional monthly update, you're going to want to create a new software update group. Now on our deployment settings, we can automatically deploy updates found by this ADR and approve the license agreements. So we'll typically set this unless you've got a requirement to do separate approval process. Now in the software updates tab, this is actually where we define out the types of updates to group using the search criteria. So filter different categories, what the classifications are, what dates do we want to find updates. We don't want to include superseded updates. So here we can select only look at the last 3 weeks because we don't want to include updates from previous months. Then we're going to choose the schedule. So we're going to choose basically when are we going to run it to create the software update group and the deployments automatically. So this is usually a day after Patch Tuesday. So on Tuesday, my updates are downloaded. And then on Wednesday, the rule kicks in and starts the automatic deployment process to the first ring. And then we're going to actually place these updates, choose to place these updates when they're downloaded by the ADR into a deployment package here. So they'll be physically downloaded into that package. And then once that's done, then we can actually define out these deployment rules according to the deployment strategy, which are defined when software updates are actually going to be deployed to each ring, as we described earlier. So we have one for each of our phases. So here, the deployment schedule settings, these actually dictate how aggressive you want to get with these deployments. So where we are basically saying, when are we going to deploy to this group? So in this case, it's going to be deployed and then be made available after 7 days. And in user experience, we're gonna hide all software notifications to the user. And we'll specifically, we won't allow server reboots, even though these are actually targeted to desktops, but just to make sure it's a safety net there. But one important point to point out here is here in the deployment schedule settings, when we reach the installation deadline time here, when it must be installed, in this case, after 7 days, the software update has become available. So we're basically going to force the installation. Regardless of any maintenance window, we want to ensure that the software updates are installed, but we still won't force an actual reboot during the working hours. So as you can see, we can quickly build up a very simple process for our software update process, incorporating our deployment strategy using these automatic deployment rules, or ADRs. So from the collection side, we have a range of different collections. And they're populated with different devices according to the strategy. So as I said, you can use AD groups to dynamically actually group these and populate them. So, we've got server versus desktop for both of the different deployments to desktop and server. And another important piece is that we should always define out our maintenance windows, particularly for servers. And critical servers. So for servers, I've defined patching is allowed to happen from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. on Saturdays, and 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. on a Sunday. Yeah, so here we have two separate groups, two different sets of groups, and the maintenance window here, it's just about defining out during these days, during these hours, when can it install software updates? When is it allowed to do that? And this also defines when the server can actually reboot. So, i.e., you don't want it to reboot outside of these defined hours. So we also briefly mentioned earlier the software update process using server groups, which is quite a new feature in Config Manager. So let's jump into another collection. So we're looking at the patch management collections. So this is particular for critical servers. So if we have a look at this collection. So say, for example, you have a collection for your high availability servers, and just imagine this is it. So maybe you don't want these servers or all of these servers rebooting at the same time, as these nodes are in a high availability cluster, and the service it's providing needs to be available at all times. It could cause major issues if they all went down at the same time. Alternatively, you could look, you could separate them out over different deployment rings manually, but that can be a bit of a pain. Or ensure that they are patched in a sequence. So node 1 first, then node 2, then node 3. So it would patch through these nodes sequentially. And you can configure a pre-install script to run. So, for example, to migrate data off, take a backup before it's patched, put it in a maintenance mode, and then when it's finished patching, take it back out of maintenance mode and carry on. So in this way, you can do the same for any of your high availability cluster nodes to ensure the patch is actually applied, and at the same time ensuring there's no downtime of your critical services. So that's kind of a background on how you can leverage these config manager features to automate your software update deployment process according to a defined and agreed software update deployment strategy to make this process easier to maintain in what is a challenging task to keep current and with software updates without having to log on to servers or critical systems and manually install patches. Many folks out there are still doing this, and it's a very time-consuming activity. And without disrupting users or services, and at the same time ensuring software updates, especially critical security updates, are being applied in a timely manner. That's the key, which will give you a better chance in being protected from vulnerabilities. The organizations that are affected simply didn't have control on ensuring their systems were actually patched with all the latest updates that are released monthly, every Patch Tuesday. This shows that ensuring that patches are actually deployed efficiently and in a timely manner on a regular monthly cadence is a challenging task, but can be simply achieved using these simple features that can be leveraged in Config Manager. Also, just to show you quickly another feature that can help with actually the client downloading the content and to reduce some of that traffic there, to ensure the client can get that update quickly. So we can look at the Express update settings. Yeah, so here Express updates. So this can be enabled here in the software and software update point in Config Manager. So Express updates can be used for Windows 7, 8.1 or 10, as well as Server 2012 or 2016. And the idea is it reduces the size of the actual software update download. So instead of being a bundled package, the Express installation file is actually, enables individual files at the byte level to be downloaded. So this allows you to download every month only the changes that have been made within those files. So enterprise clients that are configured to directly use Windows Update or Windows Update for Business they'll automatically be using Express files by default. You can configure WSUS and Config Manager to use Express installation files. When you do that, then you'll find that the Express updates content is actually larger when comparing to the cumulative update. And therefore, obviously, it takes up more disk space on your servers. The main advantage, the benefit is when the client actually downloads the content, as it's going to be smaller, because it will only download the changes. So the main benefit there is when the client's downloading the content, it's actually going to be downloading smaller bits. So when we're talking about Express updates with Config Manager, so you get Express updates with Config Manager 1702 and later. Although the limitation with Config Manager is currently only supports Windows 10 1607 or later. So to enable Express updates in Config Manager 1702, it needs to be done in two places. So you can enable Express updates here in the software update point. The option here is download full files and Express update files for Windows 10. So bear in mind that is only for Windows 10. So by default, that's not enabled. And then if we go into the client settings to configure the Config Manager agents, we need to enable some settings there as well. So if we go here into software updates, into the default client settings, and then the software updates, here there's this option here. So by default, normally it's not enabled. So enable installation of Express installation files on clients. So by default that's off, so we can enable that, and then that will enable, when you enable that, you'll get this HTTP port, which default is 8005. This is basically a loopback port that's required locally on the client to enable Express installation files for the client. So let's look at let's talk about some of the ways to monitor software updates. So beyond the standard config manager reports that you get out of the box, we've got the software updates dashboard. So since Config Manager 16.10 and Microsoft introduced this software updates dashboard, basically provides a high-level view of where you are with the software update compliance. So you can come here and you can see where you stand with your various software update deployments, and gives you kind of a snapshot view. Another option, if we go back to the slides, is the updates compliance dashboard. So this is part of the operations management suite. So you can choose to monitor update compliance, part of this operations management suite, which is a cloud service. So OMS uses the Microsoft monitoring agent on Windows 10 and Windows 2016, Windows Server 2016, to collect data and telemetry off devices and logs to analyze and interrogate that info. Once we've got that software update management. So this provides a dashboard view of update compliance, deployment progress, and failure troubleshooting. So you can also control and patch devices and servers through OMS as well. So through here you can actually define out your deployment groups, which order you want to do them, and when, and which updates you're going to apply, and let OMS handle the actual installation of software updates. Okay, so let's finish off by covering some of the key recommendations. Yeah, just so that you can keep on top of the software updates deployments. So check details and updates in the Microsoft Security Update Guide on a regular basis. Deploy monthly roll-ups and the cumulative update every Patch Tuesday. So at a very minimum, simplify deployments by just deploying the monthly roll-ups, cumulative updates, which contain all the updates from the previous month in case you've missed the previous months. Use Config Manager for enterprise class client management and reporting. So you get the wonderful automation that we demonstrated in the demo. Leverage peer-to-peer capabilities where possible. So for obvious reasons, this is to keep network traffic down and to ensure updates get downloaded quicker by the clients. And most importantly, define a patching strategy to include deployment rings, and then you can leverage automatic deployment rules, maintenance windows, and server groups for fully automated deployment of your patch strategy. As promised, there are some links here. So I mentioned the Config Manager Power BI report pack, which you can plug into Power BI and point that to your databases, your Config Manager databases, and you can start getting some cool information, especially regarding your software updates. So please check that out using the following blog post URL link. And there's also the OMS updates compliance reporting features. So there's a link there on documentation with more information regarding that.